When the British exchanged nails for favors from Tahitian women by simple history. I have a question. Since when was nails a currency? And what favors did we do?
A ship limps back into port after a 2-year-long expedition. Their crew has sailed to the far-flung reaches of the globe, visiting the most isolated places on the planet. After such a long time at sea, the ship is being held together by little more than pitch and hope. It used to be held together by iron nails, but the
Tahitian women had essentially they needed OnlyFans. Essentially.
sailors had other uses for them. This is the HMS Dolphin, a 6th-rate frigate capable of carrying 24 cannons. It was commissioned in 1752. Shortly after it launched, Britain entered the 7 Years' War, and the Dolphin was sent to fight. After the war ended, it was used for a different purpose. For centuries, Europeans believed in what is known as the unknown southern land, or Terra Australis Incognita, a supposed continent in the southern hemisphere that balanced out the northern hemisphere. Australia was revealed to the Europeans.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the Dark Ages that were like, this area, this is haunted. You cannot go there. These lands, there is monsters in the water. And who knows? Maybe there were. I know what favors they did. Oh, I know why you know that.
In the 17th century, but there was still a strong belief that there was another landmass somewhere in the huge expanse of the South Pacific. In 1764, the Dolphin was sent out to explore and exploit this uncharted part of the world. Captained by John Byron.
It's ironic that the ship is called the Dolphin, and exploiting is also something that's there. I find that ironic, considering that, well, in a way, dolphins do that with their own females.
The grandfather of the famous poet Lord Byron, the Dolphin set out from Britain across the Atlantic. After a brief stop in Rio de Janeiro and scoping out the Falkland Islands, the ship and crew headed further south to the Strait of Magellan, braving the rough and unpredictable waters at the tip of South America. The Dolphin then entered the Pacific Ocean, where they found a few islands in what is now French Polynesia. No Terra Australis Incognita, though. Disappointed, Byron ordered the ship west, reaching what is now Jakarta, Indonesia, for a refit, and then around the Cape of Good Hope of Africa. The Dolphin arrived,
and what they found was submissive and breedable women. That's what they found. That is what they found. Submissive and breedable women. The more you know.
Back in Britain in May of 1766. Though they didn't find a mythical continent, they did return with reports of the animal and plant life found on these islands, as well as the indigenous populations. The Dolphin had completed one of the fastest circumnavigations of the globe, taking less than 2 years to finish the journey. Even though they failed to find any new continent, there was still excitement generated by the Dolphin's voyage, and in August of 1766, the ship, now captained by Samuel Wallis, set out for another voyage. Crossing the Atlantic was uneventful, though the Dolphin was forced to spend 3 months trying to navigate around the tip of South America. Although they fought against heavy winds and rough seas, the crew did manage to map out terrain features of one of the most dangerous parts of the ocean. Finally, in April, they managed to clear the Strait of Magellan and sail into the Pacific Ocean. The ship survived the treacherous waters, but the crew was badly in need of fresh provisions. Captain Wallis turned the Dolphin northwest to a little explored section of the Pacific Ocean, hoping to reach land for provisions. In early June, they spotted islands in the Tuamotu archipelago.
You know what's the crazy thing, right? These men had the balls, right? These men had the... You have to consider this, right? These dudes had the balls to go out into an area never explored, not knowing what they would find, with the chance of never being able to return, but they still did it. And nowadays, going to like a restaurant is already like world travel. What they found was your mother. Well, there's a slight problem with that. When Columbus set out, he found your mother. Yes, an entire continent. Anyways. I mean, imagine being one of the first people seeing a megalodon for the first time. Think it's a monster too. Well, homie doesn't exist during humans, so all is good. But you know, you never. The thing is this, right? You never know if there were bigger animal species still around in like when this happened, right? Underwater species, because a lot of species died out before humanity even saw them. When humans were around, even in that time period, so you would never know. That's the thing, right?
Archipelago. The crew was able to stock up on some food.
Remember, around this time, dodos were still a thing. Dodos were still a thing, and mammoths haven't been gone that long too. Not around this time, obviously, but dodos were still a thing. We know there were bigger species in Australia, for example. Yep.
Food and fresh water before heading west. On June 18, 1767, more land was spotted, and on the 23rd, the HMS Dolphin dropped anchor in Tahiti, which Wallace named King George's Island. This was a massive relief, as much of the crew, including Wallace, was sick from their months at sea. Of course, they weren't alone. Tahiti had been inhabited by Polynesians who settled the island centuries earlier. When they saw the large British ships sailing in, they hopped in their canoes and paddled out to greet the newcomers. Captain Wallace saw that their canoes held not only the
Greetings! Do you want some sex? They were like, greetings! Do you want to fuck?
Tahitians, but also pigs, chickens, and fresh fruit, provisions that the crew desperately needed. When they approached the Dolphin, Wallace ordered the ship's gunner and 2 midshipmen to trade for them. In exchange, the British gave the Tahitians beads, knives, and iron nails, and fired cannons if they didn't get their way. On June 24th, according to Wallace's report, the ship was surrounded by hundreds of canoes, which he described as, quote, furnished rather for war than trade. He states that the Tahitians gave a shout and began to converge on the Dolphin, hurling stones as they paddled closer. The British opened fire, and the Tahitians scattered.
Wait, the fuckers lied? That's crazy work. That's crazy work. So when do the women happen? When do the women happen? Greetings, one slaves. No, that's Africa. That's Africa. Sorry, wrong place. That's Africa.
When a cannonball tore one of their canoes in half. Things calmed down after that, and while there was no doubt some tension, friendly relations were soon established. The Tahitians traveled to the Dolphin and traded.
So they were fighting or not? Interesting. They were fighting in this case. Surprise, surprise. Yep.
With the British, and in short order, the ship's holds were refilled with fresh supplies. George Robertson, the ship's master, kept detailed records of these exchanges. Above all, the Tahitians valued iron, especially iron nails, because they couldn't make any yet. Soon, a basic exchange rate was created, with certain goods being worth a specific length of nail. For example, a 3-inch nail was claimed to be worth a 20-pound pig. Provisions weren't the only thing that nails were used for. One day, Robertson was ashore with a group of Liberty men, those who were allowed off the Dolphin. While there, he and the others were approached by 3 Tahitian women who kept making a specific gesture. The Liberty men assured Robertson that the women only wanted an iron nail and didn't elaborate. Confused, Robertson gave them each a nail as a gift before departing. A while later, back on the ship, Robertson told this to the gunner, who explained the Tahitians were engaged in.
Well, poke it everywhere. Yeah, obviously, but I meant more like specifically for Africa. It was like, want some slaves? Because there were also cultures that just turned people into slaves after conquering them. So that's what I meant more so. With all of this, I have to say, just blame Canada and the French. Classic. They exchanged nails for sex, and now it's just $5.99. Now it's just $5.99 on OF.
The world's oldest profession, and the price was an iron nail. Over the following weeks, the sailors soon expended the ship's supply of extra nails and started to pull nails from the Dolphin.
They started using up all the nails just to fuck. That's crazy.
Itself, including the nails used to secure the sailors' hammocks and also from the cleats, which were used to secure the ship's ropes in place. According to popular legend, the sailors were so eager for female companionship that they started pulling apart the ship, so the structural integrity was jeopardized. It's a funny story, no doubt, but highly exaggerated. It was reported that the sailors were forced to sleep on the deck rather than in their hammocks, and securing the miles of ropes needed on a sailing ship became that much more difficult. But the Dolphin was still seaworthy. These reports, combined with tales from other explorers of the tropical paradise and the perceived promiscuity of the locals, caused the tale to be exaggerated. On top of this, most of the accounts were written later, especially.
It's crazy. It's actually crazy. These fuckers went out there just to get like they basically tore apart their ship just to have sex. I've seen what pussy does to a motherfucker, and it's much worse.
By Captain Wallace, who was bedridden on the Dolphin during their time in Tahiti, so his accounts were secondhand information told well after the fact, which adds to more confusion. Of course, the accounts don't take into consideration the Tahitian perspective. Rather than simply being an overly promiscuous culture, there's much more involved. The three women Robertson and the Liberty men encountered weren't random women, but more than likely followers of a god of war. They would travel around the Tahitian islands performing religious.
Are we sure this is God of War and not God of Whore by any chance? What the fuck?
Rituals to encourage fertility and prosperity, which did involve sexual acts. However, this was a very select portion of the population. The men had been unknowingly cutting a sacred grove of trees when the women confronted them. They were followers of the God of War, and the British had arrived during one of their seasonal festivals. The Tahitians may have believed that the sailors were somehow associated with their gods and included them in their rituals. With no common language, cultural confusion was inevitable. Structural integrity of the Dolphin aside, there was another issue that was a major cause for concern. Many of the ships.
So they only had sex due to their religious beliefs, so to speak. Wow.
Officers were afraid that these activities would lead to an outbreak of venereal disease among the Tahitians. The ship's doctor, however, assured them that the crew was healthy. Unfortunately, when James Cook visited the island in 1769, there was a major syphilis outbreak among the native population, which they...
Syphilis. Yay. Wow. That's spreading sexual disease, spreading STDs 101 here.
They blamed on a French expedition that reached the island a year after the Dolphin. Either way, Cook estimated 90% of the Tahitian population was devastated by Western disease. After about a month, the crew of the Dolphin had recovered and the ship's hold was filled with fresh provisions, and in late July, they raised anchor and departed. They continued westward, passing through the Gilbert and Ellis Islands and then the Marianas before navigating the Cape of Good Hope. The Dolphin returned to Britain in May of 1768. And by completing this voyage, the HMS Dolphin became the first ship to circumnavigate the planet twice. Although they didn't discover the Terra Australis Incognita, they did bring back valuable information about an exotic part of the world. The tale of the Dolphin's crew tearing apart their ship for nails may seem humorous, but it belies a much different reality, one of cultural misinterpretations, exploitation, and the ultimate destruction of a people's way of life.
That was very interesting. I did not expect, I'll be real, I did not expect that. I did not expect that. I thought like, this is just weirdly worded. So, you know, this is just weirdly worded. That's the problem. With like the title and stuff. So it's a little bit clickbaity. But, yeah, I would have never expected that people would sell themselves for, nails. Would have never seen that coming. At least it's not $5.99. At least it's not for a cheeseburger at this point. But hey, anyways, like, comment, and subscribe.